momento no, pero aún pueden hasta que empiece. Sí. Yo si veo que tienes que pasar algo, te diré. Sí, que no esté. No, eso. Sí, vaya, cuando habla el presidente, si hablo yo no te digo nada. Sí. Tranquilo. Tranquilo que me levanto y te lo. Me levanto y yo mismo.
Somos un gran equipo, más de 45.000 personas, 5 generaciones de mujeres y hombres, más de 86 nacionalidades distintas. Trabajamos para las personas, comprometidos con un mundo que plantea retos cada vez más exigentes. En 2020, a pesar de la crisis sanitaria y económica global, hemos concluido con éxito el ciclo estratégico iniciado en 2015 haciendo crecer nuestros negocios clave de concesiones, infraestructuras y servicios un 57%, siendo primeros inversores privados en infraestructuras en Chile y Colombia, incorporándonos al mercado estadounidense, creando 5.000 nuevos puestos de trabajo en el último año, invirtiendo en digitalización de procesos, en gestión de riesgos, promoviendo la cultura innovadora, aumentando un 30% nuestra inversión medioambiental. «35 años de liderazgo en la promoción y gestión de infraestructuras sociales y de transporte. Sacyr Concesiones. Motor de crecimiento del grupo Sacyr. Garantía de rentabilidad y solidez financiera. Sacyr Ingeniería e Infraestructuras. Construyendo futuro a través de las infraestructuras de transporte, la obra marítima, hidráulica y subterránea, proyectando la edificación sostenible. Sacyr Servicios. Aportando valor social. Gestionando soluciones de negocio para clientes públicos y privados. Miramos hacia el futuro con el desarrollo de un nuevo ciclo estratégico, reforzando nuestro perfil concesional en toda la cadena de valor, sumando caja y talento, manteniendo el crecimiento y equilibrio en dos ámbitos igual de importantes y necesarios para Sacyr, el operativo financiero y el de la sostenibilidad, trabajando para el planeta, comprometidos en la reducción de la huella hídrica, la reutilización y el reciclaje de materiales, el plan de emisiones cero en carbono. Creemos en nuestras personas y en la diversidad como valor y ventaja, porque la excelencia y el espíritu de equipo seguirán siendo las claves de nuestro éxito. Sacyr, desafíos cumplidos.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders. Welcome to the General Ordinary Shareholders Meeting of Sacyr. I would like to firstly thank you on behalf of the entire Board of Directors and on behalf of my own self, your online attendance to this general meeting at times that are very exceptional due to the coronavirus pandemic. In a second consecutive year, and aiming to protect the general interest, the health and the safety of all the shareholders and employees of Sacyr. It's become necessary once again to hold this meeting by telematic means, which has been possible thanks to the legal enabling and the agreements adopted by the Board of Directors. It is clear that after an entire year in this situation of a pandemic, the online event like this meeting is not anything extraordinary anymore. This communication system has allowed us to continue, in part, with our daily activities. If there were any fall or any power cut and the communications cut or anything, the meeting will be suspended for the necessary time in order for it to be solved, and it will continue once the problems are solved. We will inform on all this to the corporate website. We therefore start now the ordinary general shareholders meeting of Sacyr SA. Now I would like to give the floor to the secretary so that she can inform you on the note for the general meeting. Thank you, dear President, ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders, good morning. The appointment of these, the notice of this meeting has been announced in the website of Sacyr and the CNMV and the Society from the 25th of March 2021. And it was published on the following day, on March the 26th, on the Expansion newspaper. From the publication of the call, it has been available for the shareholders, all the legally demanded documentation for this meeting, including the draft proposals. The general meeting, as it was announced, is now held at second notice. Likewise, it was announced that this meeting will be held exclusively by telematic means, since that's how it was approved by the Board of Directors in their meeting of March the 25th, 2021, which was enabled by the Royal Decree Law 8/2020 of March the 17th of urgent measures and extraordinary measures in order to face the financial impact, the social impact of COVID-19. According to Royal Decree Law 5/2021 of March the 12th. In that sense, the Board of Directors approved all the necessary norms in order to ensure the participation and the exercise of all the rights of the shareholders in the meeting and the good development of the meeting itself. In this regard, the shareholders have been able to formulate their draft resolutions, or they have been able to request any clarification in writing and in the form terms and conditions established in the website of the corporation. They can still do it up until 12:15 when the president will start his presentation. Likewise, the shareholders that still haven't exercised the right to vote will be able to do so throughout this meeting up until the moment when the summary of the items of the agenda are announced. They will announce the period for voting of the draft resolutions relating to items included in the agenda. We shall remind you that the current meeting is being broadcasted through their corporate website. Likewise, we'd like to inform you that the Board of Directors has decided that the minutes of this general meeting to be presented through a notary system. We will have for that purpose Mr. José García Lombardia from the Notary Guild of Madrid, who has now the floor. Thank you, Secretary. Well, according to the notarial deed of 2021, with number 2254 of my protocol, you have the requirement presented by the Secretary of the Board in the exercise of the duties implemented by the Board of Directors, so that according to what's previewed in Article 203 of the Corporate Business Act, attend to this general meeting and write the minutes. According to the regulations of the Mercantile Registry, I inform that I consider enough the capacity of the meeting, and this meeting is being held according to the corresponding requirements. I also state that once the request of information and clarifications have been formulated through the different means enabled by the corporation, no shareholder has manifested by themselves or by a representative any reserve or protest on the held of the according to the shareholders, the telematic means or its celebration from where we are now. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dear Notary. According to what has been established in the social bylaws and the regulations of the general meeting, the meeting is chaired by Manuel Manrique Cecilia, Chairman of the Board of Directors, and who is talking now is Ana María Salandres as the Secretary of the Board of Directors, and as such I will hold the role of secretary. The bureau is integrated by the people mentioned and the rest of the directors who, as a result of the current situation, they attend the meeting by telematic means, as has been explained before. We also have with us the notary of the Madrid Guild of Notaries, Mr. José Miguel García Lombardia. Finally, we inform you that the process for voting and the counting of votes is object of verification by an external independent entity. I would now like to move on to remind you very briefly the rules for the development of the meeting, of which I have delivered some copies to the notary. First of all, the shareholders that wish to do so may be able to participate in the general meeting, doing it so as explained and described before. At the right time, we will proceed to read the corresponding interventions. The chairman will provide the informations or clarifications that legally and according to the bylaws are in need according to the request of the shareholders, or if necessary, they will be answered within 7 days. After a brief summary of the content of the proposals of agreements included in the agenda, we will proceed to the vote of such proposals. Firstly, we will present for vote the proposals presented by the Board of Directors, and next, if necessary, we will vote on the other proposals proposed by other shareholders. According to a draft proposal, once a draft proposal is approved, all the others related to such item will be discarded if they are not compatible with the one approved. We haven't received any proposals from the shareholders on the agenda and the legally deadline. This doesn't limit shareholders to present for voting those agreements that are legally accepted within the general meeting. We remind you that according to the regulations of general meeting and the draft proposals of items included in the agenda, votes for will be considered those corresponding to all the shares concurrent to the meeting according to the list of attendees, and apart from the votes against or abstentions that correspond to shares whose owners or representatives have or make the notary acknowledge the notary on them, or those votes whose owners or representatives have abandoned the meeting prior to the vote, and when that has been notified to the notary through the space enabled for such effect in the corporate website. And finally, the votes against or the abstentions cast through the remote vote means. According to the draft proposals of items that are not included in the agenda, we will consider the votes against all those corresponding to all the actions, all the shares present or represented, except for those votes for or abstentions whose owners or representatives have notified the notary through the space enabled for that in the corporate website, and the vote whose owners or representatives have abandoned the meeting prior to the vote and has been notified to the notary through the space enabled for such effect in the corporate website. I now give the floor to the chairman of the Board of Directors and of this general meeting, Mr. Manuel Manrique. Dear shareholders, it is for me it's a pleasure for me to present you one more yet this report as a representation of the Board of Directors of Sacyr, which I have the honor to chair. I would like to express my gratitude for the trust on this Board of Directors in order to lead the corporate project of Sacyr and to present you the most relevant data and facts that have taken place in our company during the financial year 2020. Already a year ago, our lives were marked and have been marked by the coronavirus pandemic and the global crisis resulting from it. I would like to convey to you that during all these months, the key objectives of our company have been and will continue to be preserving the health of the individuals working with us, collaborating with the administrations in order to contribute to soften the impacts and the effects of the disease, and also helping groups of disadvantaged individuals in order to mitigate its serious consequences. During these months, already over a year, we have accelerated the building of hospitals. We have continued to care for elderlies and people who depend on others in their homes and residences with a great dedication from our staff. We have strengthened the cleaning work and the disinfection of public spaces and private spaces. We have increased the resources that we offer in hospitals in order to cover the peaks of demand for care. Ultimately, we have responded fast and we have done it efficiently. In our business, I must tell you that due to the concession character and the long-term character of most of our projects and services, we have been able to withstand the strong impact of the reduction of the demand. In the key countries and markets where we operate, we have implemented contingency plans that have allowed us to adapt our offer to the circumstances of each moment, providing a successful response in terms of safety and service for our employees, customers, and collaborators. We have aimed to maintain the highest level possible of activity, but with the highest security, allowing the maintenance of the employment of our over 45,000 professionals worldwide. Besides, the investment on digitization in the last years and the innovative spirit of Sacyr have made it possible to continue providing all the support services remotely and has made it possible to adapt to the new requirements from our customers in these difficult months. I honestly believe that we have overcome these difficult tests successfully and efficiently, and we have proved once again that Sacyr is once again the company of the challenges met. In 2020, we have successfully completed the strategic cycle that started in 2015. At the time, when we started to recover from the crisis of our sector in Spain, we set out objectives that were clear and concrete, but also ambitious. Defining our focus better, reaching leadership situations in our more priority markets in order to improve our operational performance. Thus, we have become the key private investors on infrastructures in Chile and Colombia. We have increased our presence in Italy and we have entered the US, doubling the gross margin up to almost 16%, one of the best of the sector in the world. We also wanted to increase our scale, growing our key businesses, concessions, infrastructures, and services by 57%. We left aside the real estate sector and we became a global company with a portfolio that is spread in a balanced way in the key home market countries. And finally, we wanted to reach financial sustainability, for which we have managed to reduce the recourse debt by 83%. We have multiplied by 13 the operating cash flow, and we have returned a rent profitability per dividend that is stable to the shareholder. And fourthly, we have invested in the best talent. We have attracted the best professionals with attractive career development plans based on training and personal and professional development opportunities. We have retained only the best. We have offered new remuneration schemes that are more competitive, and we've also provided a value offer that is based on safety, health, diversity, and equal opportunities. Besides, the last 5 years have represented an enormous modernization of Sacyr through investing on digitization of the processes, on open innovation, and on the promotion of innovative culture when it comes to managing risks. We've also invested on new internal communication tools, and we've also invested on the diversification of financing sources, amongst many other areas. The implementation of this strategy, or meeting this strategy, thanks to the commitment and work of all of us being part of Sacyr, has led us to obtaining financial results in 2020 that are worth mentioning, including bearing in mind the COVID environment. The turnover continued to grow in 2020 by 9%. It went over 4.5 billion euros, and the operating margin reached the already mentioned 16%. The operating cash flow, the key goal of the company, reached 545 million euros, and the net profit was positive. And that turned over the situation of last year that was impacted by the provisions of Repsol. The concession business of our 3 divisions represented 78% of the EBITDA. And this is our key strength at present and for the future. The global portfolio of the company reaches almost 40 billion euros, of which 80% corresponds, approximately 32 billion, corresponds to concessions. And what that means is that the latent EBITDA of this concessions portfolio can be estimated in around over 20 billion euros. Yes, you heard well, over 20 billion euros. Despite an investment over 1.33 billion euros, out of which 300 millions were own proprietary resources, we maintained the figure of the debt, the recourse debt, thanks to the development of our concession businesses, which were over the double of the contribution in dividends to the group. This is a financial year, therefore, that ended successfully on the economic side, thanks to the strengthening of our concessions with a low demand risk and our capacity to maintain a high and safe level of activity. An example of it all are our projects in Colombia. Throughout 2020, we have commissioned over 300 kilometers of highways that represent almost half of the 600 kilometers that we have commissioned, we have concessioned in the country. We have concluded successfully the roadway Puerta de Hierro Cruz del Viso in the Caribbean coast. We will conclude in the coming months 2 more the Highway Almar 1 in Medellin and Rumichaca-Pasto in the south, which are already at a very advanced phase. Finally, Pamplona-Cúcuta at the north of the country, which is the most recent one, will be concluded next year. As such, we will complete an investment of over 2 billion euros in 5 years, something that no one had ever achieved in Colombia before in this sector. The incorporation of these assets to the operation portfolio, together with the urban highway Américo Vespucio Oriente in Santiago de Chile, our asset in the highway Pedemontana-Veneta at the north of Italy, which, by the way, will open in the coming days. It will open a new stretch, and its full opening will be in the first semester of 2022. We also have the highway Rutas del Este in Paraguay, which is the first public-private collaboration project in that country. And the Central Railway of Uruguay, amongst others, will represent a great jump ahead in the turnover of the group and in our position as leaders of infrastructure concessions. Sacyr has also continued to work and will continue to work in the long run and in sustainability. In this regard, I would like to highlight a set of actions and milestones that we have reached and are part of the ESG areas in 2020. We have increased our environmental investment by 30%. We have reduced our CO2 emissions by 16%, even with the increase of the activity that we have observed. We have recycled and reused 84% of the waste. We have increased the use of recycled water by 17%, avoiding the consumption of over 1 million cubic meters. We have provided 322,000 hours of training, 15% more than in 2019. We have trained 820,000 workers in the field of safety and health. We have created 5,000 new job posts. We have assessed the sustainable commitments of over 2,400 providers. We have approved 20 new corporate policies related to our management of sustainability. And we have helped 300,000 individuals with our volunteering and social action plans in those countries where we operate. This financial year, 2021, dear shareholders, we start a new strategic cycle that is supported on the pillars of success of the previous years, but at the same time it develops our global corporate model in order to turn it into a reference for the generation of sustainable value in the long term. Those two key levers that we already had and that we maintain, which is the cash and the talent, with which we are already meeting our financial targets, reducing the recourse corporate debt, the generation value for the shareholders, as well as our non-financial objectives related to sustainability. But this is only the beginning. In this new strategic cycle, we want to firmly promote the position that we have as a world reference in the global market of concessions in infrastructures. In order to do so, thanks to our financial strength, our strategic solidity, I am sure that we are going to reach new goals in the strategic countries with high potential. Italy, the United States, Canada, Australia, Spain, Colombia, Chile. We want to create more and better partnerships and alliances and obtain more resources in better conditions. We have worked hard throughout these years in order to have not the largest company, but the best. Many are following us. We have, ladies and gentlemen, the best company of our sector, and I am totally convinced about this. In this new era, we're going to show everything that we are in order for it to have a multiplying effect in the growth and in the performance. Of course, we will continue to generate positive cash flow at each phase of our projects. We will reduce the recourse debt to the minimum possible. We may even eliminate it. That is our ultimate goal. We will continue to attract the best talent, no doubt about that. We will continue to improve our value offer for the professionals, promoting the comprehensive development, providing opportunities and adapting to the new realities of the labor market. As you know, our differentiating strength is the concession profile throughout the whole value chain, from the selection of opportunities, the training, the development of the adequate consortium, the tender, the financing, the design, the implementation, the commissioning, the conservation, and the operation. We're going to highlight our 3 lines of business, and we will particularly focus on infrastructures: transport, highways, railways, airports, social infrastructure, hospitals, universities, and renewable infrastructures: water, circular economy, energy, etc., etc. We will do that always through long-term contracts that generate recurrent revenues with a very reduced risk of demand and in consolidated countries. With regards to the financial objective of this new cycle, I believe that these goals, these targets are ambitious, but they can be met. The strength of our balance sheet has been key in order to overcome the COVID crisis and will allow us to face the new phase with the necessary solvency in order to own a new exciting future. Our forecast indicates a growth of the turnover of up to 5.5 billion euros in 2025, improving our operational performance thanks to the mix of stable markets and concession businesses. The operational result will also grow up to 1.2 billion euros, starting from the 724 million, and 85% of that will come from our concession assets. Of course, the control of operating cash that we have already mentioned will give rise to a growth of over 80%, up to 1 billion euros, starting with 545 million in 2020. With regards to the necessary investments in order to reach this expected growth, we believe that this will be about over 5 billion euros, particularly in already agreed projects and some new projects that we will agreed on in the coming years. The dividends that will be generated by the concession, just the current concessions, will be of about 200 million a year as average, which will make it possible to self-finance the necessary proprietary resources for this investment plan for growth. I told you before about another of our key priorities, the reduction of the recourse debt. We will work on it in order to reduce it in as much as possible and even eliminate it. And of course, All this in order to ensure you, dear shareholders, that the stable remuneration per dividend that we have met will be maintained in that level of around 5%. We're working so that the market recognizes our value. The majority of the analysts already recommend to support our company with objective prices that are way above the current valuation. We're going to get this recognition. We're going to reach these very ambitious goals that I'm presenting to you. Sacyr is ready for a great jump in order to become a reference, in order to take initiatives. And I can assure you we're going to do it. As part of this strategic plan 2021-2025, we will make sure that our projects and services are more sustainable and contribute to improving the present and the future of the society. The plan wants to highlight two fields that we want, on which we want to make progress in a balanced way and in a parallel way. The financial operating area and the sustainability area. We want to be agents of change towards a management model of projects and services that in the long term provide an improvement of the quality of life of all our stakeholders. That is our aim. For the management of sustainability, we have developed a specific plan that includes 4 fields of action with specific goals. Planet ambition in the environmental field in order to meet neutrality in carbon emissions by 2050, reducing the water footprint and increase over 80% the percentage of reused and recycled waste. Our team ambition to promote talent. This is mentioned many times. We want to increase the number of female executive managers, want to reduce the salary gap, which is already very low in this company. We want to promote diversity and labor flexibility in all areas, and we want to strengthen the comprehensive safety and health, physical and mental health of all our staff. The positive impact ambition in order to get close to our stakeholders, generating trust and value in the long term through dialogue, through positive attitude, and through the social action with the communities with which we interact. And finally, a highest level ambition, which has to do with strengthening the commitment of the actual board of directors, the managing direction, the increase of the code of conduct, and the framework of the regulatory compliance. These 4 lines of action are going to be implemented as part of the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, and with the strength that we get from our Sacyr values. The sacrifice spirit, the capacity to adapt, excellence, commitment, innovation, and environmental ethics. The current year, 2021, has already started with us complying with some of our initial goals, the goals of the strategic plan that I just presented. We have earned the first concession of highways in Brazil, the RS C287 in the state of Sao Paulo, with a revenue portfolio of over 2.3 billion euros. That's how we open this market of exceptional potential. We've also entered Canada with our first projects on railway infrastructures in Toronto, and we are already pre-qualified in several bids of projects related to circular economy and water. We have started the operation of our first concession in the United States, the energy services of the University of Idaho, with a revenue portfolio of over 1.2 billion euros, which allow us to penetrate a market with never-ending opportunities. We have earned the concession of a new hospital in Chile, the Buen Paine, after the success that we had after building the Hospital de Antofagasta. We have provided the response that our customers need by building a COVID hospital in Seville in record time, increasing Hospital Gregorio Marañón in Madrid, and also participating in Madrid in the Hospital Enfermera Isabel Zendal. We developed a proprietary model for the installations adapted to the characteristics of this disease. In the coming weeks, we will also sign our second great or big agreement of concession in Italy, the A3 highway between Nápoles, Pompeii, and Salerno, with a revenue portfolio of over 2.7 billion euros. We've also signed an important contract of cleaning services and waste collection in Barcelona. This proves the capacity of our teams to innovate and compete. Now, in the area of sustainable innovation, we are presenting evidence of our interest and our transforming projects so that they can be incorporated in the development of the recovery plan, the recovery, transformation, and resilience plan of the government of Spain. We're talking about projects that are mainly focusing on the fields of circular economy of water and waste, renewable energies, and electric mobility. We have also successfully signed the issuance of the first social bond of an infrastructure project in Latin America, with a funding of $200 million in the Montes de Maria Road in Colombia, which is totally guaranteed by a U.S. official entity that supports the development. And we're also working on the last phase of a green financing structuring that I think maybe in this quarter will be made possible, and will very noticeably reduce our corporate debt, our corporate recourse debt, which is one of our key goals, as I have already mentioned. Ultimately, a financial year 2021 that is taking the right steps and the firm steps in order to meet the strategic plan. I'm sure we'll be able to provide you with better news and good news in the coming months. As you may imagine, in 2020 we have had to overcome big tests in relation to the COVID crisis, and we have overcome all that thanks to the efforts and values of our great professionals. Everybody's work, everybody's dedication, both in the works that barely were put on hold, in the services that were provided with liability and dedication, and the support areas that were rapidly adapted and efficiently adapted to remote work. All this has been key in order to obtaining the successful results that I am informing you of today. I would like to convey to you all my gratitude and my admiration. Also, on behalf of the whole board of directors, the present and the future of our company depends on all these more than 45,000 people, full of talent, knowledge, and enthusiasm. Thank you, everyone, and congratulations once again for the work performed and for the work that I am sure you will continue to perform. My final words of this report, I want them to be once again to thank you all, dear shareholders, for your trust. I want to highlight how proud I am of belonging to this company because the effort and professional excellence that all these individuals show in each and every one of their actions continue to surprise me. I am convinced that you are also proud. Sacyr's achievements are the result of the effort of a great family that year on year overcomes whatever challenges. Thank you. Thank you very much. Seriously. I do honestly believe that Sacyr is ready to be the relevant protagonist of the global sector of infrastructure concessions. The new cycle that we have just started will represent important changes that will promote our relevance in the world. We want you to go along with us so that we all together continue to be part of that overexciting project, the collective project that Sacyr represents. Thank you very much.
Before we read interventions of dear shareholders, I'd like to give the floor to our secretary, so that she shares with us attendance to the general meeting. Thank you, Mr. President. Regarding attendance, the share capital of Sacyr accounts for 660,451,000 euros, and it is divided into the same number of shares of €1 per value each. Once we have made the final count, we have the attendance present in person or represented by proxy, including the treasury stock of 487 shareholders, holders of 313 million shares of the company, representing 50.921% of the share capital with writing vote, out of which we have direct attendance of 71 shareholders holding 795 shares, representing 11%, 675% of the share capital. It is noted that duly represented we have 416 shareholders, holders of 241,932,543 shares, representing 39.246% of the share capital. The breakdown or detail of these figures will be included in the list of attendees that will be included in the minutes of the meeting. It is noted to shareholders that according to the applicable regulations, it has been considered as attendees the actions that the company has in the treasury stock. The treasury stock of the company accounts for 17,195,056 shares, representing 2.79% of the share capital. According to what it is stated in the Consolidated Spanish Corporate Act, these shares are taken into account to calculate the necessary quorum for the constitution and approval of resolutions, but they have suspended the voting rights and the rest of the political rights. All in all, we have sufficient quorum for the celebration, for holding this general shareholder meeting in a second call for deliberation, discussion, and voting of all the matters on the agenda. Based on the information provided by the Secretary and because quorum of incorporation is reached according to the law and the bylaws, I declare validly constituted the General Shareholders Meeting of Sacyr SA. According to the regulations of the Mercantile Registry, I give the floor to the notary so that he addresses the assembly to verify the attendance of reservations of protest of some shareholders about some of my previous interventions regarding the number of shareholders present to this general shareholders meeting, to the capital present and represented, and the valid constitution of the general meeting. Thank you, Mr. President. According to Articles 101 and 102 of the regulations of the Mercantile Registry, as notary of the General Shareholders Meeting, I would like to mention that if any shareholder would like to express reservations of protest about manifestations or interventions carried out by the Secretary regarding the number of shareholders present as well as the capital present, it is the time to do it through the space dedicated for that in the website of the company so that it is recorded on the notarial deed. The general meeting is informed that no shareholders have expressed any reservations of protest regarding the number of shareholders present or capital present, nor in relationship with the valid constitution of the general meeting, and so will be recorded on the notarial deed. Thank you very much, notary. Now we'd like to read the interventions that we have received through the dedicated space on the corporate website. I would like to answer those requests, and I would like to tell you that those that will not be answered today will be answered in written in the term stated in the law. I would like to give the floor to the secretary so that she reads the intervention that we have received, or to the shareholders. The general meeting is informed that we have received the following intervention of the shareholders who are present online or by proxy represented. It will be recorded on the notarial deed. The first intervention is from David, shareholders David Bermejo, holder of 115,000 shares, which literally is putting forward two questions. The first one, will you continue extending the lines of financial derivatives that the company has to protect yourself versus drops in Repsol stock exchange? Have you considered to reduce it partially or totally, that participation? Good morning. I'm very pleased to answer Mr. David Ferrer. Regarding the first question, as you know, in the year 2016-2017, this group subscribed 3 structures of financial derivatives with an aim to limit to 100% the financial risk associated to the participation in Repsol. Therefore, that has allowed us to control that perfectly right. Regarding the second question, I should answer that, as we have mentioned before, the management of the participation of Sacyr in Repsol is active. So therefore, that means that we take advantage of any opportunity available to us to improve the balance and the financial statement of Sacyr, and we will continue to do that. By the time the term of each of the financial derivatives will expire, we will consider that, but as I say, always prioritizing the balance sheet of Sacyr. Now we would like to start the voting process for the proposals for resolutions that are subject to the approval of the general meeting. For the organization of the voting, I'd like to give the floor to the Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. Now we'd like to move on to the voting of the proposal for resolutions subject to the general meeting regarding the items on the agenda. The voting will carry out regarding what is stated in the regulations. As is according to the what it is stated in the Consolidated Spanish Corporate Enterprises Act, the directors that have any conflict of interest with regard to the voting of some of the proposals that are subjected to the general meeting will not be able to vote the actions regarding those proposals unless they have received express instructions for their voting. That without prejudice of the provision about alternative proxy to the secretary of the board and or the deputy secretary, according to the instructions, voting instructions included in the call of this general meeting. The general meeting is informed that according to the regulations, the proposals are considered to have been read fully. It is also noted that I have handed out to the notary the text of the proposals for resolution so that they are recorded on the minute. Now, we'd like to briefly summarize the proposals for resolutions that are subject to voting. As we can read on the agenda, and following the recommendations of the good corporate governance, the matters are grouped in several blocks. A first group were the financial statements, management reports, and non-financial information, as well as social management of 2020 are subject for approval, as well as the re-election of E and Y as account editor of Sacyr and the subsidiaries for fiscal year 2021. A second group about the board of directors, where we subject to approval and ratification the re-election of Mr. Raimundo Baroja Rio as proprietary director. The proposal of modification of the policy of remuneration of the directors and the proposal for the application of remuneration of in shares of the ILP 2021-2025 for the executive director. Third group, modification of some of the bylaws to allow the online attendance to the general meeting, the call of online meetings, and that the board of directors is only made up by physical or persons. Fourth group, we propose the modification of some of the provisions of the regulations of the general meeting to make for them to fit in with the modifications or amendments of the bylaws. In the fifth point, we propose the approval of 2 capital increases for the remuneration of shares in the form of scrip dividend. In the last group, we have a group of authorizations to the board of directors for the first, the issuing of convertible values in shares. Second, for the issuing of fixed income values. The third one for the acquisition of shares, and last for the delegate or for proxy of powers to formalize and to elevate to notary public the adopted agreements. Once we have the matters on the agenda approved, I would like to inform the general meeting about the amendment of the regulations of the board that was approved by the board of directors on the 17th of December 2020. Being the justification and the new text which is resulting from this specific documentation about that matter that has been put at the disposal of the shareholders before this general meeting. I'd like to remind you that it is not necessary to vote on this point. I would like to now the term for the issuing of voting on the proposal for resolutions to the points matters included on the agenda of today finishes right now. Once we have finished the voting, now it is recorded that the minimum number of necessary votes to approve each and every one of the proposals for resolution about the matters of the agenda. Now, in view of the results, I'm pleased to announce you that there is sufficient majority on each of the items on the agenda to approve all the proposals subject to this general meeting. The final results of the voting will be published on the corporate website of our company. Thank you very much, Secretary. We declare approved each and every one of the proposals for resolution about the items on the agenda. The items approved and the results of the votes will be published on the corporate website in the following 5 days, in the next 5 days. Before we finish the general meeting, I'd like to give the floor to the Secretary. Thank you very much, Mr. President. After finishing the voting of the agreements of the general meetings, once we count on the voting, the final results will be recorded on the meetings. The approved agreements and the results of the voting will be published on the corporate website of the company within the next within 5 days following the general meeting. At last, as we have mentioned at the beginning, the notarial deed will be considered as the minutes of the general meeting. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. President. Before I declare finished this general meeting, I should like to lastly thank, on behalf of the Board of Directors, to all the shareholders for attending the general meeting by telematic means. I also would like to convey to you our gratitude to everyone making up this Sacyr group, and very much especially to you, dear shareholders, for trusting this company. Thank you very much. The meeting is over.
...2020 ha sido un año de grandes desafíos para Sacyr, para todos. Nuestros equipos han demostrado una gran capacidad de superación, adaptación y resiliencia. Hemos acelerado el proceso de construcción de hospitales y hemos reforzado todos los servicios que prestamos en ellos. Hemos desinfectado calles, plazas y edificios. Gestionado residuos de la COVID-19. Cuidando de las personas más vulnerables. Juntos hemos superado retos como la digitalización de la gestión, la ciberseguridad y el teletrabajo. Gracias al esfuerzo de todos, en 2020 nos hemos consolidado como una empresa global, de perfil concesional, con presencia en más de 20 países. Celebramos el éxito de nuestro plan estratégico 2015-2020. Somos rentables y globales, orientando nuestros esfuerzos en el crecimiento del modelo concesional y siguiendo una estrategia de reducción de riesgos en nuestras inversiones. El enfoque hacia mercados desarrollados con necesidades de infraestructuras para su crecimiento nos ofrece un marco laboral, legal y financiero estable. Destacando que tras la integración en 2020 de Sacyr Industrial, hemos logrado mantener la competitividad de nuestras 3 líneas de negocio, creando mayores sinergias entre ellas. En Sacyr creemos en el desarrollo de un futuro sostenible, generando un impacto social, económico y medioambiental positivo para la sociedad. Comprometidos con los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, ODS de la Agenda de las Naciones Unidas, que marcan nuestra hoja de ruta en la contribución a una sociedad más equitativa. Impulsando nuestro Plan de Sostenibilidad 2021-2025 y desarrollando nuestra gestión ética y responsable desde el más alto nivel de exigencia. Lideramos iniciativas para reducir el impacto en los ecosistemas, impulsando la economía circular, el uso responsable del agua y la mejora de la eficiencia energética, con el compromiso firme de ser neutros en carbono en 2050. Colaboramos con cerca de 30 fundaciones en todo el mundo. Unos acuerdos con los que hemos beneficiado de manera directa a más de 30.000 personas, más de 300.000 de manera indirecta. Nuestro mayor activo son las personas. Por eso fomentamos un entorno laboral diverso e inclusivo, garantizando igualdad de trato y oportunidades, evitando cualquier situación de discriminación en todos nuestros puestos de trabajo. Sacyr. Desafíos cumplidos.